you've sat in class with him or you've done, a workshop or something with him, you know what's coming. For those of you who haven't, woohoo, hold on to your seat because it's going to be enlightening. Charles is the founder and director of the Rojzman Institute. And in that institute, or at that institute, they provide professional training and development for facilitators in transformational social therapy, which is TST, right? And so how does he do that? Charles developed TST. So we have like the guy, the guru in the room. We should be happy about such a thing. He'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I'm sure Chet has talked to you somewhat about the certificate, which is loosely based around TST and some other kinds of concepts. But Charles, when I say that Charles has done this work around the world, I mean, lots of times I'm sort of like exaggerating and adding yeast to it, as my mother would say. But I mean, I'm actually being literal in this situation because he has done this work with groups in France and Rwanda and Ireland and Germany and Russia, just to name a few stops on his passport. He's literally everywhere. I was counting continents, trying to think of the most impressive way to do this. And let's just say, if you think about a major international conflict that has happened, Charles has probably either been a part of it or he's written about it. So it doesn't get any better than this. Charles facilitates issues ranging from tribal issues or disputes to race relations, and his work knows absolutely no bounds. He works with police and the populations they serve, and all sorts of populations in between. Most recently, he and his team have been selected to work with the new French government to talk to them about how they might treat their citizens and how they might develop policies and procedures as to go forward. So once again, when I tell you we got a big guy in the room, we got a big guy in the room.
I try to do my best. It's more difficult for me to have a speech like that than to lead a workshop, because a workshop, there are a lot of interactions. And here I am the only one who will speak, but maybe, I hope so, we can to say something about from where I come. Because when you create something, when you create an approach, it's because it's come from you, what you are, the life you had, the experience you had. And I have a very specific experience, and I wanted to tell you about it, because I am not a simple Frenchman who is speaking to an American audience. I am a man who has a lot to do, who had a lot to do and has a lot to do with diversity issues. I am French citizen, I speak French, but I have a very specific issue about diversity and racism. My parents were not French, but Polish Jews, half Polish, half Russian Jews, and they lost their family during the Second World War. Family was killed, the whole family was killed by the Nazis, including my 4 brothers and my grandparents, and I don't speak about my aunts and uncles and cousins. They were all killed at the same time, maybe in the same years where I was born. So tells you something about my passion for to understand violence, and especially collective violence, to understand what is racism, what is hatred. It's also because of this past experience. My father was a complete, how do you say in English, illiterate. That means he was not able to write and to read in any language. He was a very simple man. And my parents they came in France, they were immigrants, and they used to say, don't trust any French people. And I am French. So, but when I was a child, they told me, don't trust French people. Trust only Jewish people like us. And so for me, it was the beginning of an understanding how it happens that people don't trust other people because they have not the same origin, the same language, the same skin color, everything you want to think about it. And leaving a child full of these tales about war and massacres, I chose to marry a German woman, you see, and whose father was a soldier in the Wehrmacht, the German army, and the father was fighting in Poland and Russia, and maybe killing some of my people. But this man was a wonderful man, a nice man when I met him, and so for me it was very interesting to try to understand how these people, these kind people, normal people, can be sometimes in a time of war monsters. After this detour by my personal life, because I think it's important, because what we do is always to do something with ourselves. I want to share with you 5 very important principles about TST. It will give you a little taste on how we work in TST with hatred, fear, violence, and conflicts. TST has a theory, and I wrote books about this theory. TST has a theory, specific notions, concepts, and process. But it's not a model. It's not a model that you can apply on people. I will, for instance, teach you a model, and afterwards you apply it. It's not like that. TST is a process you need to experience and to go through, and it will change you. The training itself will change you in order to help people to change. We will see anyway that we don't try to change people, they change in the process. They change because they want to change. It's not something you apply to people in order to tell them you have to change. I worked in very different countries, and it was one principle I have to say about TST is that in TST we don't need to know the context, the social, economical, political context. I worked in Russia, I worked in Africa, I worked in South America, in some other country with different cultures, and always when I come and I see the people, I say, I don't know your life, your problem, your situation. What I know about you and your culture and your issues, for me, that's how they have to think about the issue, what they have to do. We don't do it, not at all, because we are unable to do it, because they know what they have. They know their situation, they know their environment, they know their life, they know their experience. But what we do is to help to meet different people, to meet people who are very different and sometimes enemies, sometimes not enemies but antagonistic, and we help them to share the true information they have about the issue, to share their experience, their intelligence, to share it. And when I say true information, it's because when we put people together without this TST process, it's not true. It's only the masks. People speak with masks, or they speak to please other people, or they speak to provoke other people. They don't speak with their hearts, and what we try to do, they speak with they try to protect themselves. And so we don't have the real information we need in order to solve problems. So, some other principles. I think, maybe I am wrong, but I think it's impossible to solve diversity issues only on an intellectual level. It's impossible. It's very interesting. You can make a theory about diversity. We can make everything we want. We can think about it. But the way diversity affects us is essentially emotional, relational, emotional, and has to be faced in this reality. We have to think that there is an emotional life in all our groups, in our couples, men and women, or women and women, as you want, in our couples, in our families, in our teams, institutions, neighborhoods. There is an emotional life that exists, but we don't take care of it. We don't know what to do with it. So we decide not to do something with it, not to live with it. Maybe we can speak about anger, we can speak about sadness, we can speak about emotions. But we don't try to heal these emotions of sadness, hatred, and so on. Mostly when the feelings are very negative and scare us. That's the first thing I wanted to do, to say about one principle of TST, is that we work with the emotions of the people, not only on a theoretical level, not only trying to explain why the people are like that and so, but people come with their emotions. The second principle, very important principle, is that people live, I would say more and more, separated. Separated because they used to live with people that are similar to them. Same background, same skin color, same experiences, same religion, same ideology. Because we feel safe when we are with people who don't disturb us emotionally. And that's very dangerous, because that builds separation in the society. That builds what you speak of ghettos, but in France too, in Europe too, we speak of ghettos. We have more and more ghettos. In French, we have schools only with black kids or Arab kids and no French kids. We are more and more in a segregated society. It's very strange because we, especially here in the United States, you came from a really segregated society between black people and white people. But I think this segregation is still here. His own ideas about life, and don't confront these ideas with ideas of other people. And so I work with kids in the inner cities, what we call suburbs in France, banlieue, suburbs. They are only living together without the adults, without the wise people, the older, we are the elder, without the elder. They don't live with French people. When they are Arabs, they live with Arabs. When they are black, African blacks, they live with African black. And so this separation, this segregation makes them, because they don't meet really other people, they build an image of the other, and this image is a demonized image, and that's very dangerous because there is no space. I work with the police. The police, they speak only with other policemen. They have confrontation with kids, with mother, father of the population, only with the violence, not a real talk together and so on, and that's a very big problem. And in TST, what we do, I can say, is to help these people to meet, even if they don't want to meet. Maybe you will have questions how we do it, but we try to meet, to put together people who don't want to be together. They don't want a dialogue. They don't want to say, we want to be better friends, we want to know you. They don't want, because they think the other people are the enemies. We learn through this experience and approach in TST, is that the problem? It's a very big principle about diversity. Diversity is never a problem, never. Never a problem, the problem is the violence. And when we say violence, that doesn't mean only physical violence, it doesn't mean only mistreatment, harming other people, but it's meaning we will see other things like humiliation, like self-humiliation, like abandonment, like self-abandonment, like guilt-tripping, like mistreatment, of course, also. That means violence has many sides. And I will say something about these many sides of violence. But diversity is something, it's part of our life. We are diverse. We are men and women. We are old and young. We see, my friends were in a cafe in Philadelphia where there was it was very multicultural with Jewish people, black people, and so on. But all these people had a very good relationship without violence between them, and this diversity was a richness. It was beautiful to see all these people together, because it's a richness to be diverse and to be together, men and women, old and young, black and white, and Latinos, and so. That's good. It's a good thing. It's not a problem. Never. It's never a problem. When there is violence, there is a problem. That means diversity is not an issue for me. The real issue is violence. And we don't have to do something about diversity when there is no violence. And when I say violence, be careful, I say all this kind of violence, sometimes in a subtle form, and sometimes violence against people themselves. Somebody, for instance, who is mistreating himself, like not caring about his weight, or not caring about alcohol, not caring about teeth, that's also violence. It's a mistreatment against ourselves, and we will see, I will say later, that violence is really part of our life. We are all living with violence, and we were all victims of violence in a way or another, in our family, with our teachers, with our neighbors, with our friends. Violence, we have something to do with violence, to understand what is violence, and to prevent violence, because why we cannot live together or work together, it's because of this violence. Not because we are diverse, not because we are not the same, because we are not the same, and it's normal. That's the third principle. I saw the title, Teaching Tolerance. Maybe I will shock some of you. I don't think it's bad to teach tolerance, but I think it's not sufficient. It's not efficient to teach tolerance. Because when you teach tolerance, you can reach only the people who want to be taught about value. You cannot succeed to teach to the people who don't want this tolerance. But we can do something. So, one principle is, in TST, we don't teach tolerance. We don't teach a good communication. We don't teach to the people how to have a good communication with other people. We don't teach anti-racism. We don't teach it. But we help people, and that's very important, we help people to overcome the obstacles to be tolerant. You see, we don't teach them to be tolerant, don't tell them to change, so you are not tolerant, you have to be tolerant. You are a racist policeman, you have not to be racist. No, we don't do it. We help them to overcome the obstacles because they are not tolerant, because they are racist, because they are violent. We help them to overcome these obstacles. How we do it? We create a frame which allows people to be aware of what they do, which doesn't help them to face difficult challenges. That means we don't put people together and tell them, so you are enemies, you have to be friends, and so on. That's completely utopian. We don't take Israeli and Palestinian together. You say, oh, you have to make peace. We don't take Hutu in Rwanda and Tutsi, and we say them, okay, you have to be friends, and so on. That's not what we do. What we do is we try to find a problem these people has to solve. Something they are suffering of, they need to change the situation, and they need to be with the people who are part of the situation. And because they need to do something, they will be together. They will be together, and afterwards we will create a frame where they will show that if there is difficulties in the life they have in the neighborhood, or between police and population, or between teachers and students, they have something to do together in order to create an alternative, to create a new way to solve the problem. It's useless in our time. And in ways it does succeed. It's better to work when people have something to change in their life, and they need the other people to change it. I will give you only a very short example about work in Rwanda. Maybe Rwanda it's very far. Maybe you think it's very difficult because it was their genocide. But it's to give you an example. In Rwanda, there are people who were murderers. They killed people, they killed families, whole families, and so on, and they were in jail because after the genocide they were put in jail. It changed. Why? It's because they are a frame where they feel safe, they feel loved, they feel more and more in the process, they feel valorized, and so on. And in this frame, it will awake their best side, the side who wants cooperation, who wants love, who wants to be near other people. And the other side, the side of fear, hatred, and self-hatred will diminish. Because we think in TST that people are very ambivalent. People, everybody, me, you, everybody could be able to be violent, or to be mean for other people, or to be good, or to love. And it depends on other people, of course. It depends on our family. You know, when in your family you didn't receive enough love, valorization, safety, you are more on the side of the fear and the hatred and the violence. And if you receive enough love, enough security, enough safety, enough valorization in your family, you will go more to the side of love and cooperation with other people. It's the same afterward. It's the same in the social life. It's the same in our groups. And in our groups, we give a frame where people will be different, because they will change, and because they find all these needs, they will change. Okay. Last principle, very, important principle. In TST, we make a very important difference between violence and conflict. In the common sense, we often confuse both and use the word conflict for what I call violence. It's very important to see it because you will see that if you want to teach, if you want to work on diversity issues, if you want on everything you want with other people, conflict is necessary. Conflict is good. Because we are not the same. We have not the same values. We have not the same power. We need to be in conflict. Not always, of course. Sometimes we don't need to be in conflict. But very often, we need to be in conflict. Even in a team, you know, I work very often with teams. In a teams, there are conflicts because we are different, we are not the same. Maybe we have not the same way to work, or maybe we have not the same ideas about the issues. Maybe we have somebody has more power, the chief is more powerful, for instance, and so on and so on. So we have to be in conflict when we don't agree. And violence is something else. Violence. What is violence? My own definition of violence is there is violence every time we dehumanize the other. That means we don't see the other like a human being with all the complexity of a human being, contradictions, emotion, sufferings, background, a very specific human being. Not somebody you put in a box, like you say here. You see? When we see the other as a human being like us, with a background, education, sufferings, and so on, not as somebody inferior, because violence begins when you think people are inferior, or when you think people are objects for you, for your greed or your needs, you see them as objects or animals, like animals. That means you dehumanize them. That means you don't see like human being like you. And that will be violence. And we are often like this when people don't meet our needs. We are dehumanizing them without being very conscious, without being aware that we are doing it. We don't see them like us, we see them as bad. To think people are evil, completely evil. And that's violence. And when there is this violence, of course, it's not possible to do something, and we have to see that it's possible to have conflict without violence. And we have to be trained, to learn, to change, transform this violence in conflicts. And in our life, there is very often no place for conflicts, no place, and no training for conflicts. We are not trained to be in conflict. And so, because there is no conflict, there is violence. Maybe it's complicated to listen at that, but for me it's very, when we avoid conflicts, we think about the people and we start to demonizing them, to dehumanizing them, because we don't speak with them about our conflicts. With my own TST, when it was difficult for me, stressful for me with somebody, I abandoned him. I abandoned the person. For me, you don't exist anymore. And that's violence. And we are not used to think of it as a violence. And in a team, in a school, for instance, my son was, when he was a child, he was a student in the school, and he was not pleasing his teacher, The teacher was a woman, and he was not very good student. He was maybe lazy. And once she said to him, "For me, now you are a shadow. You don't exist anymore." And that's violence. And you can understand this violence. Violence comes from the fear, because my son was not meeting her needs to be loved, to be appreciated as a teacher, and so on. But it was violence. And so in our life, we use this violence. And especially, and maybe the last thing I wanted to do about these 5 principles of TST, we are all violent in our life, all violent at one moment or another moment, in a certain way or a gross way. We are humiliating people, we are abandoning people, we are mistreating people, because we were ourselves victims of violence. And I can swear you that I worked with 1,000 groups, and never I saw that somebody was not in a very different scale victim of violence. In his family, in our family, or in the social environment, everybody was victim of violence. Of course, when you see violence as humiliation, abandonment, mistreatment, guilt tripping, everybody was victim of violence. And when we are with other people, and when it's difficult, we are, without knowing it, we are using violence for our social difficulties. Because if we live in a very complicated world, complex world, and we need to be together to find solutions. We need collective intelligence. But this collective intelligence exists only between people who trust themselves. We have no fear, no hatred, no violence. And the reason it's to do something about hatred, fear, violence, it's not only important to live more peaceful. It's also important because we have to understand that this kind of feelings, fear, hatred, violence, prevent us to find solutions. Find solutions in our teams, in our institutions, in our relationship between students and teachers, in our team of teachers or team of administrators, and so all this, we are not conscious of all these feelings, but these feelings, this emotion, prevent us to find solutions in the workplace and also in our families. Because what I say today, nothing is simple today. It's not simple to live between men and women. It's not too simple to live with our children. We are in a very complicated world, and so we have to learn how to deal with our emotions, with our conflicts. We have to live with our conflicts and fight sometimes when there is a reason to fight for our needs. When you are wife with husband, for instance, as a wife, you have to sometimes to fight for your needs in order not to be victim of the violence of your husband, and maybe the same on the other way. But we have to be able to have constructive conflicts and not to see the others as monsters or ghosts. But again, to see that we are dealing with human beings like us, human beings who were also wounded sometimes, and sometimes very severely wounded, and you don't see it because they hide it with different strategies. Even powerful people hide it with their power. But we have to think that we have to deal with human beings and with institutions, and these institutions are full of human beings like what we are, and we have not to see the institutions also as monsters. We have not to see the government as a monster, as a ghost. We are part of the society, and we have really to learn. It's a title of one of my books, How to Live Together. We have to learn it, and to learn it not because somebody teach us, but to learn it because we make the real deep experience. Thank you.